U.S. officials are now in Kyiv for the Trump administration's renewed push to try to end Russia's war against Ukraine. Amid this push, Russia's war continues. Overnight aerial attacks killed at least 25 people, injured dozens more. Margaret Brennan, Chief Foreign Affairs Correspondent and moderator of Face the Nation, joins me now to discuss. What do we know, Margaret?
Well, this is a highly unusual trip, and it's a big decision for President Trump to send any of his officials to Ukraine because he's largely tried to disengage in terms of a presence in Kyiv. But he has sent in the head of the army, the top general as well of the army, and military officials. And this is significant. Ukrainian officials tell me tomorrow they expect President Zelensky to meet with Dan Driscoll, who is the army secretary. And the mission includes, yes, feeling out the potential for getting back to those ceasefire talks that Ukraine and the U.S. had agreed to the parameters of, but without Russian buy-in. But it's also to talk about military technology development and to understand what's happening on the battlefield. And as our Ellie Watson has reported, it was the White House who chose this Pentagon official to, I guess, find a way for the military minds to be meeting rather than that of the diplomats.
You had the Army Secretary Driscoll on Face the Nation. He said this about Ukraine and what can be learned from it. Please listen.
There's not a single person I know that doesn't think that is an incredible treasure trove of information for future warfare. I think a lot of the questions are, how do we actually execute on the president's agenda of peace in that part of the world?
So, Margaret, is there something that constitutes new suggestions to the Ukrainians about what the United States thinks the contours of a peace resolution might be?
Well, we know that Trump and Zelensky agreed to freeze the line of conflict along the existing battle lines, not necessarily for Ukraine to cede that territory permanently back to Russia, which is what Russia claims it was Russian, and Ukraine knows it was right. It's been Ukrainian territory and for some time. So we know that broadly, and the idea of security guarantees were broadly agreed to, but nothing beyond that point. Remember, President Trump put more sanctions on Russia, oil and gas, just last month because Russia was not coming to the table with those terms. In terms of what Driscoll is arriving with, it's a little bit more of a battlefield assessment. We know at the same time there's this parallel effort. Days after President Trump put those sanctions on Russian oil and gas, he still allowed for a top Russian advisor to Vladimir Putin, this gentleman, Kirill Dmitriev, who's a businessman, to meet in Miami with his envoy, Steve Witkoff. We knew it was happening at the time. We knew they were talking broadly about outlines of a plan. Axios has reported it's now down to 28 points. We have not confirmed that. None of the European officials seem to have been briefed on it in terms of specifics. So the allies aren't looking at it as necessarily a serious offer. They are looking at Secretary Driscoll being in Kyiv as a very important thing to watch. Why he was chosen as the person to represent the United States and what he comes back with. Now, in terms of what the return to the United States is and what Secretary Driscoll was speaking about there is an argument among Ukraine hawks within Republican circles that Ukraine is a testing ground for the future of modern warfare, and that the United States is learning quite a lot when it comes to artificial intelligence, drone, anti-drone technology, and to view this not as a loss for the United States to invest in the conflict and its military space, but as a win longer term. So Driscoll, who is charged with modernizing the drone force, is very much focused on that portion of it. Russia's been buying Iranian drones. And by the way, in recent weeks, we've seen a number of incursions into European airspace of drones believed to be Russian.
Ukraine as a laboratory, it very well may be, but it's a bloody laboratory for sure. Margaret Brennan, thank you so much for that.